boundaries between these areas are very semi-permeable. So how can we make our ethics bear upon digital technology effectively, systematically, inclusively, transparently, accountably, usefully, and in a flexible or agile way? If we don't do that ourselves, on the basis of the things that we think are important, then others may do it for us. If we leave that vacuum, then others may do it, and they may not be so thoughtful or well motivated or pro-social or altruistic. They may do it self-servingly, haphazardly, surreptitiously, and ineffectively. And we don't want that, of course. So ethics needs to be present at the right moment, at the right place, for the right actors and the right agencies in the right form, or otherwise our ethics will not be effective. It will be a nice conversation that we have on Friday evening with a nice glass of wine, and you have wonderful wines in South Africa. I was there recently, enjoyed it tremendously, but it will not make a difference on the Monday morning when we have to program stuff and we have to think about architectures and we have to think about the technical. And so the problem is, how can we translate these very high level but very important conversations very abstractly? How can we translate them to where the rubber hits the road? And this is the technology, the digital technologies. So people are now aware of the fact that there is this huge, exponential growth of the technology, development of technologies, exponentials going up. But our laws and our thinking, our reflection is very slow, linearly growing. So in this space in between opens up a gap. And so we are confused, we are puzzled, we are disagreeing, we are fighting over all kinds of things. What is the right thing, the good thing to do? So that explains the attention that has been paid to ethics in recent times. Now, everyone has in the last decade started to talk about, and the big corporates, and even Silicon Valley, strangely enough, has been talking about fostering responsible innovation with AI, with data, and digital innovations. Responsible. That's help ourselves to new functionality to solve our problems, but do so responsibly. Google talks about it all the time. Microsoft talks about it. Say responsible innovation, the next wave of design thinking, and keep in mind it's design thinking, because that is going to be important in my message, one of my key messages today to you. So even Meta, right? Responsible innovation principles they even have. Innovative by nature, responsible by design. Against this design is very important. Responsible innovation, SaaS systems, software, statistics, and even generative AI, we know that we need to introduce that in a careful way, and otherwise we may destroy more than we were able to reap the benefits of. So even at the level of the UN General Assembly, Guterres has said, talks about responsible innovation and dissemination of scientific knowledge. So the rough idea here is that we need new power. We need to harness and use the power of new digital technologies, but we have to do so in a way that doesn't create new problems or exacerbate old problems. And we have to do, while we're at it, we have to proceed responsibly. That is, not violating ethical principles or extant law, and in general optimize the conditions for responsible use of the technology. Now, so this is a kind of a couple of things that come under this idea. Identify serious societal problems, whether it's mobility or healthcare or climate change or energy transition. So we have a lot of those very serious problems: schooling, education, the rule of law, the design of new institutions, serious societal problems. How can digital technologies help? Develop robust and novel functionality that demonstrably solves problems without creating new problems that are worse or as bad or exacerbating old problems. Think in advance about options and alternatives and their consequences and implications. evaluate these in light of explicitly in moral terms. So call a spade a spade. When it's about privacy or sustainability or democracy or accountability, use those terms. Don't shy away from that. And involve all relevant direct and indirect stakeholders. So the people who are affected by the technology or their legitimate representatives. And of course, also try to think of future generations of the people who may not yet be here, but will suffer the consequences of these new technologies. And use, and this is the new thing, I think this is, again, use these moral considerations as requirements for design of the services and the technologies that you're working on. So I'll leave the other one for discussion perhaps, but that's what we need to do. So the first question that we need to address is, you have some new digital technology, a new solution, and the first question you have to ask, it is innovative, but is it also good? People tend to suggest or believe that if something is innovative, it is also good, and that's not true. We have seen many examples, stuff that is very good, interesting to have, solves a lot of our problems, but there are also very many examples of things that are not so good to have. We have to think in advance as much as we can about the implications and the effects of the things that we're about to introduce into society. There are some things that are obviously good. You know, this is an example here from my university, Delft. People are working on a spoon for people with Parkinson's disease. They are spilling their soup or they're unable to eat. They need to be spoon-fed. But here's a mechanism that counteracts the tremor in their hands, and it allows them to eat by themselves and restores their autonomy, which is a wonderful thing to do. It's very cheap, it's relatively easy, and the benefits are huge. But this is an example, this is the application of the Internet of Things. It's a push button, you stick it on your fridge and you can order over the internet, in this case, macaroni and cheese. That's not perhaps a very sustainable solution, and it was decommissioned by Amazon because if you, for every produce that you use in your household, you have to have a button like that, and every household in the world needs something like that. The world will be littered with these push button things lying around. Or you can think about self-parking slippers, an idea in Korea. It's a nice application of artificial intelligence probably, but it's not the thing that we need most. Can we please aim at solving urgent and important problems where we can really make a difference? That's the thing. And there's no shortage of these issues that need urgent solutions and need urgently to be addressed. And you find the stock list in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, of course. So the question is, how can we use digital technologies, AI, data, whatever, for good? So what are we talking about here concretely? Give a couple of examples. There's privacy respecting technology or privacy enhancing technologies. That's that provides us with very powerful digital technologies, but it's not undermining our privacy. It's both respecting our privacy and our security, and at the same time it is providing us with functionality that helps us to solve our problems. So it's coarse graining, for example, of the data that allow us to reap the benefits of the knowledge, gain knowledge of the things of those parts of the world that we need a better understanding of, and at the same time it preserves our privacy. So techniques are many: k-anonymity, data clustering, differential privacy, homomorphic encryption for privacy preserving machine learning, all of these use of synthetic data, for example, discrimination detection on the basis of data science. You can see where people have been doing things that they could have only done if they had access to data that they were not allowed to have access to. For example, you can use statistics to find out where people have been discriminating, for example. So what are these examples of? They're examples of the following pattern. that you want your privacy and you want your security and you want your sustainability, and you want, functionality to solve problems. And therefore you have innovated. You have innovated in such a way that you have a service or a product that allows you to serve many of those moral values at the same time. And so these values are always in tension, but you have somehow by design overcome that tension. So this is the shape that digital ethics takes. I think is a very important part of its work. A key feature of responsible innovation, therefore, is the design of new functionality that allows us to expand the set of obligations that we can satisfy. Obligations to our customers, obligations to our fellow citizens, and obligations to future generations, for example. Here's another very recent paper from a group, PISA, very good colleagues in PISA, who are doing exactly this. It's balancing privacy, utility, fairness in federated learning, for example. You see that the same pattern. We want privacy, we want the utility, and the fairness. So that's this is a message that is also told by Paul Nemitz. Paul Nemitz is the senior legal advisor of the European Commission. He was very important in the development of the privacy legislation in Europe, the GDPR, and has also been very important in thinking about the regulation of artificial intelligence. And look at what he says about this. In order to protect and strengthen Western liberal democracies in the age of AI and the core Trinitarian idea of human rights, the rule of law, and democracy, we need a new culture of technology and business development, which we call human rights, rule of law, and democracy by design. And the message here is, if we don't design for our ethics, it is not going to happen. It will only happen if we really study it closely and we specify what it exactly implies in terms of the requirements. This is also a conception or an idea that is embraced by the WHO, for example, in its report of 3 years ago, The Ethics and Governance of Artificial Intelligence for Health. And look what the text says. It's downloadable, it's on the internet. Design for values is explicit transposition of moral and social values into context-dependent design requirements. A roadmap for stakeholders to translate human rights into context-dependent design requirements. That is what we need to be able to do. Everyone is working in the future in digital technologies has to be able to do that kind of stuff. Now I'll unpack that a little bit for you, that new functionality that allows us to expand the set of obligations that we can satisfy. Three ideas. Value is design consequential. Designs are not value neutral, and we can deal with conflicting values by design. So these are the three core ideas. First of all, values are design consequential. So if you are so big on sustainability or accessibility, look at the picture. So I'm separating your waste or making it possible for people to, in a wheelchair, to go to the dentist. You will think about how you can realize this. And if you're so enthusiastic or so passionate about these things, access for people, handicapped people, to healthcare, or sustainable storage of waste, then I expect you, rightfully, I expect you to be very creative and very forthcoming and anticipatory in thinking about how you can realize this, how you can make this true. So if you have been talking about security or privacy or democracy, and you were going on and on and on about it for years, then when the push comes to shove and the moment is there to buy new software or to install a new application, I expect you to bring this to the table. And if you don't, I think, I start to relativize and question and wonder whether you are really, really, really interested into it. So that is somehow a real serious and genuine commitment to a moral value in the world of technology, and that's the 21st century. Everything is designed. I expect you to bring this to the table. So to value something is to care, desire, and prefer a world where that thing you care about is realized, implemented, and designed for. That is design consequential. So that's one link, connection between design and value, of the design value nexus, if you want. The second idea is that designs are value laden. They are not neutral. They are laden with the values of the people who think about them. So look at this solution. If you don't want people to sleep on park benches, you can design this feature in. That will prevent people from sleeping, so you don't need to send police people in to chase them away. I'm not suggesting that this is the way to go if you want to solve the problem of homeless people, or people don't have a bed to sleep in. But you see what I mean. It is a solution of some kind, and this is happening everywhere. This is a famous example. You may have seen it, and this is a paper already in the 80s of the previous century, authored by Langdon Winner, philosopher of technology, who wrote this famous paper, Do Artifacts Have Politics? Well, artifacts do have politics, like the park bench that discriminates against people who want to have a rest or lay their head down, right? So this is a low-hanging overpass, and it's Brooklyn, New York. 100 years ago, it was designed by a racist architect. Right? The racist architect, we found out later. Right? What was happening is they were designed so low. This is the reason why the truck is in a bad position right there. But they were designed in such a way to prevent the buses from poor black neighborhoods to go to the white middle class beaches in the weekend. So this guy actually installed these, designed them, the height of these overpasses, of brick and mortar and concrete and steel, in such a way that they were acts of discrimination. So this thing is having that societal moral effect, and that's the way we need to look at digital technologies as well. This is a very crude example, and this happens everywhere. There is bias in search engines, the algorithms and recommender systems. There is algorithmic bias in news feeds. There is design for addiction. We know all of that, of course, right? And so if you design your house in this way, that's slightly biased towards having a nice car, and it's giving pride of place to a car, but that's not the ideal way to. This is just a joke to show you that in the architecture, the thinking before you start to detail and build something, already the architecture, also in information systems, is leading the way, and is already might contain some of our biases and ideas and worldviews, and it needs to be scrutinized. It needs to be critically examined in light of those. So that idea that values are design consequential, and that designs are not neutral but laden with the values of those people who are commissioning something or buying something or selling something, that must be used responsibly. And everything today, of course, is designed and is built. Smart cities are built from A to Z, and they contain millions and millions of those decisions that are implied by worldviews and biases and strong ideologies, and they need to be examined in that light. And the people who are working on those also need to be aware that they may be biased and that they have worldviews that may not be aligned with the worldviews of other people, and they need to be open to dialogue and discussion. It's very much true what Churchill said: we shape our buildings, and thereafter our buildings shape us. We build the house with our ideas, and we live in the house, and we become like the house that we have built to a certain extent. And of course, in IT systems, values are everywhere, in interfaces, infrastructures, algorithms, ontologies, code, protocols, integrity constraints, architectures, etc., etc., etc. And the complex information system that we encounter as a user or as a buyer or as a customer or a patient is the, let's say, accumulated number of decisions that have been made, some of them absolutely trivial and of no consequence, and some of them, like the low-hanging overpass, may really undermine us or prevent us from doing things that are important to us. So this is the main problem that we have called, the problem of value-sensitive design. On the left-hand side, there are these values. It's the world of ethics, of norms, of laws, of ideals, of principles. People care about a great deal, and they discuss constantly amongst each other. And then on the right-hand side, there's the world of technology. Not only digital technology, but it's difficult to imagine that there is a technology that doesn't have a digital component. And we want not the discriminatory, the racist ideas to be sunk into the right-hand side. We don't want the discriminatory ideas to be implemented in the world of technology. We want our shared values to be implemented and expressed and incorporated and embedded in the world of technology. And if we have done so, we want to be able to justify, explain, and audit that we have the proper and appropriate values implemented, and we have implemented them in the right way. So justification. This is something that is not supposed to be taking place once every 10 years, but this is something that we need to be able to do on a day-to-day basis. On the left-hand side, you see these values, and you can see them as non-functional requirements for those with a technical background. And I was given to understand that all of you have a technical background, so these are requirements, but they can be thought of as non-functional requirements. This is a handbook. It's way too expensive. We're going to make this open access. So we hopefully within 2 years we will have 1,200 pages on designing for X, design for privacy, many examples, also methodology of how to do that. But roughly the idea is this. Every person who is somehow involved in the design and development of systems, digital systems or other systems, not only digital but also other parts of engineering, have to be able to think in terms of what are the societal values, what are the moral values, and how can we break them down in norms, policies, mechanisms, protocols, or business rules, and how can we squeeze design requirements out of them. So think of the top level as high-level, non-functional requirements that have to be and we have to be able to do a kind of functional decomposition of non-functional requirements so that we can translate them into design requirements. You see, this is my starting point. Ethics needs to be brought in close contact with where the rubber hits the road, and this is where people design for those requirements. This makes it also enables us to test, validate what we've come up with, and see whether we have been true to those starting points, which are our values. So what we do in teaching at European technical universities is this. We start with values, privacy, and we break them down. What do you mean privacy? People are often confused and they find it very difficult to explain what privacy exactly is. So you have to push yourself and others and say, well, what do you mean privacy? Well, privacy is risk mitigation, accountability, data quality, security. And then, what do you mean with risk mitigation? Well, risk mitigation is data clustering, coarse graining the data, pseudonymization, and now someone could come in and say, well, you have at the lowest level, you've left out data minimization, for example. You add that. But what you see, the result of all of this is that you have a very tractable and very clear and transparent way of moving from ethics to engineering. And that's exactly what is needed. Now you've certainly found yourself in context where you have been discussing privacy over and over again, and you were disagreeing. People were, championing privacy. People are trying to relativize privacy, and but this is a way to make it productive, your discussions, and tractable, and also actionable. Very important. So we do all of these things. It looks deceptively easy to do it once it's there, but it's very difficult to do this for a given new problem. right? So you have a value, you have a certain type of application, and you have to sit down and see what that value implies in terms of requirements for the thing that you have in mind. This colleague from the US counted 21 or 30 different definitions of algorithmic fairness. We don't want discrimination by algorithm, right, or in the data set. So how do you do that? What do you mean fairness? I can give you so many different definitions. Equalized odds or equalized opportunities of predictive equality or balance. So first you have to do what is called in statistics confusion matrix, true, false, and false negatives and true positives and ratios. So for example, fairness definition called equalized odds aims at equal true positives and true negative rates. So if you choose that, you have to be able to justify your choice. Why is it this particular idea of fairness that you use for customs checks on airports, or for selecting people for mortgages or for entrance into university? So why do you choose this particular definition? And is it working? Can you test whether you're really reaching those ratios of true positives, false negatives, etc.? You also have to design for contestability in this context. So you see that conceptualizing of contestability, this paper, this is a design approach. This requires what we call conceptual engineering. So if you start to use those terms like privacy and democracy, as I've done in the last a half hour, then you can see that there are ethical problems. If you start to combine them or apply them to the world of digital technologies, AI and human dignity, or deep learning and accountability, or big data and privacy. I tell my students, if you want a paper subject, you can take a randomly picked term at the left column and combine it with a randomly chosen item in the right hand side, and you will have a nice topic for a paper. But if you think about these things, then democracy and intelligence and person and friendship are very problematic terms, right? So philosophers write books about them, but they're very unclear what they exactly mean. You can have 50 different ideas about friendship or democracy, many, many more, for example. And so you are confused. But in the world of digital technology, when you append or prefix a notion from the digital space to those confusing concepts we're confused about already, then it becomes hyper or super confusing. So if you were, you said you were not clear about what friendship is. Now someone online or a net friend is even more problematic. My kids come home, or my grandchildren come home, and they say, "I have 1,000 friends." Well, really? I mean, so 1,000 friends, then you must be working with a different conception of friendship than I am. What is a blockchain organization? What is algorithmic fairness? We just looked at that example. So you use the word cyber community, digital democracy, blockchain organization, algorithmic fairness. What you're saying is it's a sort of fairness, a sort of intelligence, a sort of community, but you're in a conceptual vacuum. And if you're in a conceptual vacuum, you don't know exactly what you're talking about. You're in a policy vacuum. Which rules do you come up with? Which policies do you adhere to? And therefore you are in a design vacuum. You don't know what to design. First you have to fill the conceptual vacuum by choosing and justifying why you're using that particular conception of fairness or democracy that you're going to design for. So if democracy for you is, let's say, elections, then you will start to invest in secure, unhackable voting systems. But if democracy for you is deliberation among citizens, then you will start to invest in platforms that enable citizens online to come together without the discussion being hijacked or manipulated by enemies. So you see different trajectories depending on your definition of the value that is. So ethics by design is conceptual engineering, and moral values need to be broken down and decomposed into non-functional requirements. And then you have to do requirements engineering and functional decomposition, and you have to rapid prototype, and you have to develop prototypes and see whether you're moving in the right direction. And this needs to be agile, this needs to be short cycles, and not once in every 10 years, but on a day-to-day basis. You have to move through these things. And this means that we have, for the first time in history, in history of ethics, we have something like an empirical cycle. So you start with equality, you explicate it into, okay, equality means democracy, and you specify democracy in terms, for example, of deliberation among citizens, and then you start to design for deliberation online in terms of fair platforms where people can meet and discuss, and then you investigate whether you like what you see, whether people are happy with that result, and you feed that back into your starting point. So this is a kind of a recurrent and iterative process that will give you some traction and also give you some ground to stand on. Now the problem is, of course, that you have so many values to care about. You have to take care of privacy and of security and of democracy and sustainability, and there will always be conflicts and dilemmas. These things will be always be in tension. For example, efficiency comes is in tension with safety, because safety measures always cost money. And if you are more private, then your accountability will probably suffer, and confidentiality goes at the expense of transparency, etc., etc. So it looks like a problem, and my suggestion is actually this is a great help. This is a great source of inspiration. Value conflicts and tensions can be used to our advantage. In his first instance, they lead to moral overload. Oh my gosh, I need to take care of cybersecurity. I need to take care of privacy and of sustainability, etc. All of these things, so you're morally overloaded, because you need to do not either or, but you need to do and. So now's the positive note. Innovation by dealing with the problem of moral overload. It's a source of innovation if you at least seize that opportunity. If you try to hide it under the carpet or pretend it's not there, you will take away an opportunity to innovate. So this is a bus that exploded in the Netherlands. It was optimized on sustainability. It was plastic and aluminium and liquid gas, right? So very sustainable, but not very safe. What you want is a safe, sustainable bus. Patient record systems, national records, and privacy, always a problem, right? It's clearly reducing the cost. It's in favor of, or it supports patient safety. You can exchange data more easily, but the privacy is a problem. The privacy needs to be, when you start to develop the architecture, the first stages of thinking about an electronic patient record system on a national level, or sharing data, you have to address these ethical issues right from the start and design them in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It will be too late. People will be raising privacy issues or security issues at a later stage, and then it's too late to incorporate them. So we had the same problem in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands, where we wanted to smartify the electricity grid by introducing smart meters in every household. This is the smart meter plan, right? But then people said, oh, what about our privacy? Because, with some data analytics, you could read out these meters and can see who has been using his hair dryer, in which room of the house, which movies had been watched on Friday evening, etc. Some data analytics used to that, and then privacy was was the kind of the problem, and they just decommissioned this whole thing. So the gains of sustainability were lost because that was necessary. We had to make the grid smarter. the privacy was spoiling the whole thing. It should have been introduced along the lines that I've just explained. It's a non-functional requirement that when you start to think about these solutions, you have to incorporate that. So what's the structure of the problem? The structure of the problem is you want sustainability and you also want privacy. Or you want privacy and you want security in the streets, right? So that's the eternal debate, especially in Western Europe, between cameras to prevent crime and privacy. Now, the problem of moral overload is the following. You want your privacy and you want your security. This is the and thinking, security and privacy. In the right upper hand white square, there you meet both values above a certain threshold level. This is the space where you are doing the right thing, in principle. But often you are struggling with, stuck with a first generation 1.0 camera system that gives you neither privacy nor security, gives you razor sharp images of innocent citizens and blurred images of the crooks. So you have neither. Or you have a second generation, a 2.0 camera system. It's greatly improved. And now if you hang it up, you have a lot of security but no privacy, or you don't hang them in the city and then you have a lot of privacy but no security. You see where we're going. You're pushing the Pareto frontier, or you're trying to push the envelope to where you meet that white upper hand right square. So a third really smart camera system does the following. It allows you to have your cake and eat it, to square the circle, to have privacy and security. So it's a privacy respecting, privacy enhancing application of camera technology. And this exemplifies a higher order obligation and principle in ethics that goes as follows. If there is an obligation to do both A and B, we have a second order obligation to see to it that we can do both A and B. So if I have an obligation to rescue John's life and Harry's life, then I have an obligation, a second order obligation, to figure out whether there's a way to save both of their lives, right? So that is, and that applies to the value issues that I've just sketched. So the moral axiom of responsible innovation is that if you can change the world by innovation today, by thinking about a clever move so that you can satisfy more of your obligations and responsibilities tomorrow, you have an obligation to innovate today, to create the world, to design the world in such a way that it allows you to satisfy more of those obligations. Now, can all problems be solved in this way? No, but the privacy by design, some important ones can. So if you want to count the number of people in this audience, but you don't want to give away their identities, you can coarse grain the data. This is a very simple, by reducing the number of pixels, but these actually are the sophisticated techniques to coarse grain data. So this is an example. I may have to go quickly through this if we want to leave some time for a discussion. But as an example, I found very impressive, actually. It's an IBM case that starts from the observation that we made during the Corona crisis, where people were locked into their houses, and it gave rise to, unfortunately, to violence against women and girls and children, because people were locked up and the tensions become high, and power imbalances aggravated and exacerbated. And so this was a finding that we did. This is violence against women. And then this has been called coercive control, and digital technologies were used to control people. So bullying husband or brother, or maybe just using advanced digital technologies to keep tabs and tracking the victims, stalking, checking agendas, checking expenses, even using doorbells to control who has been visiting. Even toys of children have been abused for this purpose. It was not a trivial problem. So systematic, pattern, purposeful behavior on the part of the abuser to control his or her victims. So here are the ways to do it. It's a very nasty business. And then IBM came up with a program called "Let's do something about this." Let's coercive control resistant design. You see, let's design and formulate principles so that we can, all our services, digital services and products, and design in such a way that they prevent this from happening, that they don't create an ecosystem where this is possible and easy to do. So they came up with a very detailed program to design, for example, against gaslighting, where people could say, to their victims, "Oh, you have forgotten your appointment with your hairdresser. You're becoming forgetful, or you're chaotic, or whatever." So that's so we can also think about design for attribution when it comes to generative AI. So at the root, you have to attack the problem of people creating output that is very difficult to distinguish from real, genuine output. It's faked, it's manipulated, and we want to make it easy to pick that. What has been manipulated, what has been generated by AI, and what is the result of human labor. And that needs to be designed in at the root of the system. So a group of people have been actually working on that. It's kind of watermarking techniques, hash techniques, etc. And so they start with these values: the right to know, autonomy. I would like to make my own decisions and not be fooled by other people. I want to be able to take responsibility, and I want also other people to take responsibility for generated content, and I want them to be transparent and clear about that. You break them down, specify them in norms of representation, detectability, inspectability, attribution, and security, and then you squeeze design requirements out of them by implementing very specific techniques. So again, this is the value hierarchy that I've been advocating: the right to know, autonomy, responsibility. Break it down and break it even further down. And this is the way to explain what you have been doing and that you have been doing the right thing. So dealing with moral overload by design, that is exactly also what we need in the space of artificial intelligence. Use the power of deep learning and generative AI, but at the same time trying to bring in transparency, interpretability, explainability, and explainable AI. So, in conclusion, values construed as non-functional requirements can be drivers of innovation if we pay attention for that. So that makes innovation also a little bit of a moral activity, where we try to serve as many of our values and responsibilities as we can. So, and this is the way I close, is that not everyone gets this idea. And this, I have two examples of people who are close to getting it, but not really. So if you look at this Financial Times interview with Google chief Sundar Pichai, he says, smart regulation is balancing innovation and protecting citizens. So he opposes innovation to the protection of citizens. You see, that's the two things that he opposes. So balanced innovation is in tension with the protection of citizens. And here you have the data protection registrar of the UK, and she opposes privacy or innovation. So privacy and innovation. So innovation and privacy opposed here. Right? So what I have been advocating, and this is the picture that they have, so it's innovation versus ethical values. And then we have a little bit of debate or argument about that. What I have been actually suggesting is that, you have ethical values, sustainability and privacy. This is the problem of moral overload. You want all of these things, but they're in tension. Your innovation is the smart idea that allows you to satisfy more of those blue circles, right? As many as you can. And so the trend is, the moral progress is to design for sustainability in all of these things, and security and privacy. So that's the idea. Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes or so for discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeroen. And I would dive straight into the questions just to make sure that we can maximize the time. I have unmuted Thuso if you want to turn your mic on and ask the question. Thank you. Thuso, you may have to unmute your microphone, otherwise we will move on to Chanda. Okay, I'm not sure with Thuso, we're having issues here listening to you. However, let's move on to Chanda. Chanda, I have allowed your microphone. If you can turn your microphone on and ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you for taking us to the ivory towers of academia. My first question is, how can we balance AI data needs with individual privacy rights? And my second question is, how do we ensure advanced AI aligns with human values?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think you're getting at to the core problem here, and it's only 1 hour, so I've not been able to really unpack this and just give you the gist of this idea. Actually, the question you pose is the core question of our whole research program in Delft. So this very advanced artificial intelligence. And then these human values. Actually, we have a paper on how to design for human values and human rights, so we are constantly looking for new ways to deal with the technology that allows and puts users and people in the position of responsible agents. To give you a simple example, if I am, introducing autonomous weapon systems, right? And these things may go rogue and they may fly everywhere. What I can do is I can geofence. I can limit, I have a smart robot that moves around. I don't want it to go into the room, in that room, so I have to somehow program it that it doesn't go into that room, right? So, and if I fail to in advance think about what I don't want to happen when I release the robot, and I don't actively program and take precautionary measures to prevent it to move into that room, I am responsible, right? So that is the challenge. So there are many ways to to program and to insert our ideas into at the level of the technology, but it requires a lot of hard work and hard thinking. But it's possible. We have some. We're optimistic. Sometimes I say, well, I'm still optimistic, but I'm receiving treatment for that. But I'm in general, I'm optimistic about what we can do. Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Chanda, for your question. Moving on, Samukeri Siwe, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I am allowing your microphone if you want to ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Prof, for the wonderful presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, you touched on real versus AI-generated images.
Yep.
As an example. So I just want to find out, how should AI systems be designed to avoid an overreach when detecting cyber threats? So for an example, what are the ethical safeguards that should be put in place to ensure that false positives are prevented that could actually harm legitimate users?
Yep. Now, first of all, we need to do something like geofencing, so we need to limit, these systems have been trained on particular data and for particular uses, so it needs to be heavily contextualized. We have to make sure that if they're trained on these types of data for these particular types of, we need to ensure that that these data are representative and that they are not, these systems are not used out of the context. So that just to give you an example from the medical field, and we're working closely together with the hospital here in the intensive care. So, for example, if you create data by scanning devices or medical sensors, so for example, you have patients in bed and they have to have this medical imaging made, or medical images made. Some patients can get out of bed and go to the scanner on the next floor, right? So they have to go with the nurses to the scanner and have the images made. Some people are too feeble to go to that scanner, and then the mobile scanner has to come to their bed, right? So so now you have two types of patients: the patients that are strong enough to move themselves, and the patients who are not able to do that. In the creation of the data, you have to annotate the data, because that make a big difference later on when you are training models and artificial intelligence on those data. They need to take that on board. The other point, or in response to your question, is about validation. So if you're afraid for false negatives or false positives, some applications you may be you're focusing on the false negatives or the false positives. You have to test, you have to validate, you have to run, this increasingly number of tests, to test for bias, to test for the rates of false positives and false negatives that you're producing. And that is becoming much more common nowadays. Also in medicine, we're thinking about, the equivalent, or the functional equivalent for models. First of all, registration of those models. What are you testing? What are you working on? And then you have to do something like a clinical trial for your model. So where we're clinical trialing medicine and pharmaceutical products, you have to do the same thing for digital tools. Right? So you have a clinical trial for your model. So these are the things that we're working on, and these are, I think, ways to go, and in response to your question.
Thank you so much. I believe we have time probably for one more question. We have 5 minutes, but we have next Baloyi. I have allowed your microphone. If you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Very great session, I have to say. But my question is with regards to the cyber diplomatic opportunities, especially in terms of ethical behavior among states, and as well as what roles can AI actually play in developing those diplomatic or those ethical cyber diplomatic opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's an intriguing question. Thank you for that. I know that in international relations and in diplomacy, these things are being used and applied. So artificial intelligence is being used in trying to, for example, find common ground in very elaborate different viewpoints of different delegations. And trying to identify what a common core is of things, where people may come to an agreement that they may have overlooked themselves, right? So you can easily imagine that ChatGPT would come up with something that we have in common on the basis of thousands and thousands of documents and papers that our countries have been producing in the course of time. So and then of course human beings would, and diplomats and politicians would come in and say whether that has any meaning or is interesting. But it's in philosophy of science we make the difference between the context of discovery and the context of justification. So it may trigger all kinds of new ideas, it may throw up all kinds of things, and 80% of them may be rubbish, but 10% may be interesting that you haven't thought about. So I know that the UN has also been using AI to in the Palestinian-Gaza Israel conflict to use these things. It's delicate, of course. It's very problematic, but I think there are some interesting also in the let's say generation of treaty documents. There have been an international law. Some people have been advocating the use of artificial intelligence. I know. Yeah, there's a book by Deeks. That goes into this. Deeks, Deeks, yeah. So yeah, I think every area that we can think of, artificial intelligence will be applied, and some of these issues. But we must not forget, and this is an important point that I haven't made, but that's a different lecture, that artificial intelligence does not understand anything, right? It is not about understanding and meaning. It is made by big tech to suggest that it understands, that it is having conversations, that a robot gives us something, but it is this human language or anthropomorphizing language. But we should not be led to believe or fall victim to the idea that it is somewhat like us. You know, people want us to believe it, but it's a sales pitch. It's a marketing trick. It's human beings understand, they give, they trust, they believe, or they have knowledge, but computers don't. They are just very sophisticated screwdrivers.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I want to thank you in general for the lecture and coming here today. I know you have a very busy schedule, and that's why I hope to wrap this up a minute early to give you a little
Thank
bit
you
of
so
leeway.
much. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed. I wanted to say there's the University of Stellenbosch. I visited in last year in the fall, and I hope to revisit because I thoroughly enjoyed the visit. And so that's. I wish you all good luck with your studies and your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
To everyone else, we will do a quick Mentimeter, if that's okay with you. Hopefully my computer will not crash today like it did yesterday. If not, my colleague Anna will help us out. I am sharing my screen. Let's see. All right, can people see my screen? Okay. All right, so let's start off with what is, oh, give it a second. If everyone, I'm gonna wait maybe just a minute for everyone to join me at menti.com. Use the code 87277037, please. Okay, wow, we already have an answer. Beautiful. Okay, so the question is, what is a major ethical concern when using AI in cybersecurity? Okay. Give you a few more seconds to fill that out. Okay, it does seem like it's quite unanimous on B. AI may be biased due to the data it is trained on. Let's see. Oop, second. And the correct answer is 84. Okay. Which ethical principle is important to ensure AI use responsibility in cybersecurity? Okay, a few more seconds, although it seems like people have made up their mind for A, transparency and accountability in AI decision making. If that's a correct answer. Indeed, the answer is A. Third question, how can AI contribute to unfair discrimination in cybersecurity applications? Someone continues to believe AI is neutral. Okay, and I think this speaks a lot to the lecture we just had, of course, the inclusion of biases and how that can play a role within AI algorithms. Let's see, the correct answer is indeed B. AI algorithms can be biased if trained on unbalanced data sets. Okay, why is AI decision-making in cybersecurity sometimes considered unethical? Okay, a few more seconds. Okay, so AI systems can make security decisions without human review. Seems to be, yep, the correct question. Answering. Which of the following is an example of responsible AI used in cybersecurity? Give you a couple more seconds. The correct answer is indeed using AI to monitor and detect threats while keeping a human in the loop. All right, next. Why is quantum computing considered a threat to modern cryptography? Okay, a few more seconds here, although it seems like the majority has already chosen B. Quantum algorithms can break widely used encryption methods like RSA and ECC. That is indeed the correct answer, my bad. Next, which quantum algorithm poses a significant risk to public key cryptography? Okay, a few more seconds, although this is quite unilateral. Ooh, sorry. Indeed, the correct answer is Shor's algorithm. What type of encryption is considered resistant to quantum attacks? Okay. A few more seconds. Indeed, post-quantum cryptography algorithms, PQC, and I believe there's also the book on post-quantum cryptography that that Thomas Atema told us about to also get some background research within quantum cryptography. All right, next, which cybersecurity measure can help protect data against future quantum threats? Okay. Indeed, B, transitioning to quantum-resistant encryption methods. And I believe this is the last one. What is a primary goal of post-quantum cryptography? Okay. Okay, and indeed the question is to develop encryption methods that are secure against quantum computers. Stop sharing. Okay. I want to thank you all. This will be the last lecture for this week. We'll start back off on Monday. Thank you all for participating and being here and having patience with our technical difficulties. We identified the issue last time. And again, I just want to thank you so much and see you next week. Bye, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.